All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to talk about solving formulas. This should be a somewhat short section. In this section, we're just going to talk about how to solve algebraic formulas for specific variables. Algebraic formulas are just equations, which we're familiar with, but they contain multiple variables, so very few numbers, lots of letters. We can use algebra rules to solve for any particular variable in the formula. And so here we're just going to work through some examples so you can kind of get a feel for how this works. So here we want to solve for b. We have a equals 1/2 b times h. So we want to get b by itself. The first thing that we can do, and this is anytime you have a fraction, we can multiply both sides by the denominator. That will get rid of the fraction. So let's multiply both sides of the equation by 2. Remember that you can multiply both sides of an equation by any number, and you're not changing the equation. And so 2 times 1/2, those are going to cancel out. And we're left with 2 times a is equal to b times h. Now, if we want to get b by itself, we can simply divide both sides by h. Just like multiplying, if we divide both sides of an equation by the same thing, we don't change the equation. And so what we get is b, which is what we were looking for, is equal to 2a divided by h. So let's try this again. We'll try another example. 2l plus 2w is equal to p. We want to solve for L. We want to get L by itself. So to get L by itself, first we need to get the term with L in it by itself. So to do that, we're going to subtract 2w from both sides. 2w minus 2w is equal to 0. And we get 2L is equal to P minus 2W. Now to get L by itself, we're just going to divide both sides by 2. And we get L equals P minus 2W over 2. Be careful that you do not try to simplify these problems more than necessary. This is an acceptable answer. Don't try to simplify it any further. So now we have ax plus by is equal to c. This one should look somewhat familiar. We want to solve for y. We want to get y by itself. So we're going to subtract ax from both sides. And we get b times y is equal to c minus a times x. Now we can just divide by what's not y, so we're going to divide both sides by b. And we get y equals c minus a times x over b. Let's try a few more examples. V equals 4/3 pi r cubed, and we want to solve for pi. We want to get pi by itself. So just like in the previous example, we have a fraction, so let's multiply both sides by 3. And we're going to get 3 times v. On the right-hand side, the 3's cancel, and we're left with 4 pi r cubed. And now we want to get pi by itself. So we're going to divide by whatever's not pi. So in this case, 4r cubed on both sides. The 4's cancel, r cubes cancel. And we're left with pi is equal to 3v over 4r cubed. Okay, let's try a slightly more complex example. We want to solve this equation for f. Here again we have a fraction, so let's start with that first. We have c equals 5/9 t times f minus 32. The f minus 32 in parentheses could be a problem because we're trying to solve for f. So what we want to do is get that parentheses part by itself first. So let's multiply both sides by 9. If we multiply both sides by 9, we're going to get rid of that fraction. And we'll get 9c is equal to 5t. The 9's cancel. Times f minus 32. Now we want to get f minus 32 in the parentheses by itself. So we're going to divide by whatever's not that. And so we'll divide both sides by 5t. And now what we have is 9c over 5t is equal to f minus 32. We lose the parentheses because now f minus 32 is the only thing on that side of the equation. We can then add 32 to both sides. And we're going to get f is equal to 9c over 5t plus 32. And finally, one final example. We have p equals q minus q and t. We want to solve for q. Well, q's in two different parts of this equation. We need to get q by itself. We can't move the terms around because if we do, we have q on opposite sides of the equation. So what we need to do here when we have a variable in more than one term is isolate those terms to one side of the equation and then factor. We want to factor a q out of the right-hand side of the equation. If we take a q out, what we're left with is 1 minus n times t. This 1 is very important. It gets left out very often. If we were to multiply this back, q times 1, we would get q. And then q times nt, we would get minus q nt. If the 1 is not there, you don't get the first term. But now that we have factored q out, we have q all by itself. We can then divide by what's not q, which is 1 minus nt. And so what we get is q is equal to p divided by 1 minus nt. So make sure to remember the 1 whenever you factor a variable out. So at the end of this lesson, you should be able to solve an algebraic formula for any particular variable in the formula.